Good evening. On World News Tonight, escalated clashes. Protests in Iran escalating as death toll rises beyond 2,000, along with more than 10,000 arrests amidst US threats. Travel accident. Close to 25 people dead after crane falls on train in Thailand's northeast. Pen pal bonds. Childhood pen pal friends rediscover each other after years of delivered letters and being friends. Good evening. Thank you for joining World News Tonight on Adhar News Channel. I'm Sitmi Adhikari, and we start with the rationale for US military strikes to help Iran's protesters at the crisis moment, for the theocratic regime is becoming more urgent and compelling by the hour.
Iran's clerical rulers face their toughest challenge in decades. But despite nationwide protests and mounting foreign pressure, analysts say the Islamic Republic security elite shows no sign of cracking. The unrest began in late December over soaring prices, and then escalated into calls to end clerical rule. One U.S. rights group says over 2,000 people have been killed in the unrest, largely protesters. An Iranian official gave theirs a similar estimate, blaming the deaths on what he called terrorists. The protests follow last year's U.S. and Israeli bombing campaign, targeting Iran's nuclear program and key officials. Now U.S. President Donald Trump is warning Tehran that continued killings could trigger new American intervention. A White House official told Reuters all options are on the table. Analysts say Iran's security architecture, anchored by the Revolutionary Guards and besieged paramilitaries, makes external pressure unlikely to succeed without internal defections. Together, those forces number close to 1 million. Iran's 86-year-old supreme leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei has weathered 5 major uprisings since 2009. But experts warn survival does not equal stability. Sanctions have crippled the economy, and Iran's regional alliances are weakening. Trump has hinted at measures ranging from cyber strikes to restoring internet access for protesters. But U.S. military assets are stretched, and any action carries serious risks. For now, Washington's strategy remains unclear.
Said to Iran this morning that help is on the way for protesters. What did you mean by that? What kind of help?
You're going to have to figure that one out. I'm sorry.
A train traveling from Thailand's capital to the country's northeast was derailed after a construction crane fell on top of one of its carriages, killing at least 22 people and injuring at least 80.
At least 25 people were killed and about 80 injured when a train derailed in northeastern Thailand on Wednesday. The accident occurred after a construction crane collapsed onto 3 carriages in Siku district, about 140 miles northeast of Bangkok. The train was traveling from the capital to Ubon Ratchathani when the crane, which was part of a high-speed rail project, fell onto it, causing it to derail and briefly catch fire. Authorities say more bodies remain trapped inside the wreckage, but recovery efforts were paused after the crane shifted, posing further danger. Transport Minister Pipat Ratchakiprakan said 195 passengers were on board and ordered a full investigation. Images from the scene show overturned carriages and firefighters battling flames as smoke billowed. The elevated line under construction is part of Thailand's planned high-speed rail network, which is being built above existing tracks.
Greenland, which chose to remain Danish over US takeover ahead of crunch White House talks to the future of the Arctic island, which President Donald Trump has repeatedly threatened.
Amid Donald Trump's threats to take Greenland one way or the other, the Arctic Territory's Prime Minister was unequivocal. We are not for sale.
Greenland does not want to be owned by the US. Greenland does not want to be governed by the US. Greenland does not want to be part of the US.
Prime Minister Nielsen added that in the current climate, the semi-autonomous territory would choose to remain part of Denmark, which has ruled it for centuries. He was speaking at a joint press conference with the Danish Prime Minister, who said it had been difficult to confront the United States, a fellow NATO member.
It has not been easy to stand up against completely unacceptable pressure from our closest allies for a generation. But at the same time, much suggests that the hardest part still lies ahead of us.
White House officials have been discussing various plans to bring Greenland under US control, including potential use of the military and lump sum payments to Greenlanders as part of a bid to convince them. As tensions mount, the foreign ministers of Greenland and Denmark have arranged to meet the US Vice President and Secretary of State on Wednesday.
Our reason for requesting this meeting has been to move this entire discussion, which has not become less tense since we were last there, into a meeting room where you can look each other in the eye.
Trump insists the US needs Greenland for national security. Greenland and NATO have said they intend to strengthen the territory's defense.
We all agree that when it comes to the protection of the Arctic, we have to work together. And that's exactly what we are doing.
Some alliance members have floated the idea of launching a new mission in the region, although no concrete proposals are yet on the table.
Venezuela's top lawmaker Jorge Rodriguez said over 400 people have been freed from prisons as part of an ongoing release process, although rights groups say the real figure is much.
Through tears, Rodriguez Trujillo calls for the release of her brother Renny, one of the many alleged political prisoners held in jails across Venezuela. Her plea came as the country's top lawmaker Jorge Rodriguez said Tuesday that over 400 people had been freed. The claimed mass release follows last week's announcement by Rodriguez and U.S. President Donald Trump. They said a large number of prisoners would be freed as a peace gesture after the U.S. capture of President Nicolas Maduro. For the opposition, freeing political prisoners has been a long-standing demand. The Venezuelan government denies holding anyone for political reasons and says it has already released most of the 2,000 people detained after protests over the contested 2024 election. On Monday, the country's penitentiary authority said that 116 people had been freed. But Gonzalo Jimiob of local NGO Foro Penal says the actual number is far lower.
The government's announcement was an announcement of mass releases from prison, and this must be refuted immediately. These mass releases have not taken place. Let us remember that the base figure we had established in the penal forum at the time of the announcement was 806 political prisoners. And if you compare this number with the number of releases, which today stands at 56, the truth is that there have been very few releases during this period.
The organization also denounced the slow pace and lack of information surrounding the releases. For families, the uncertainty is agonizing. Sonia Martinez, aunt of detainee Victor Borges, says they're left wondering about his status every day.
It's as if they turned off the light. Every day is the same. The same thought. Where is he? How is he? What have they done to him? Is he alive or not? And living like this every day is the same because we still have the same lack of information.
No información.
Opposition leader and Nobel Peace Prize winner Maria Corina Machado has been one of the leading voices demanding prisoner releases, with some of her close allies among those still detained. She's expected to meet with Trump on Thursday. Families and rights groups have denounced what they say is abusive treatment of detainees. They say this includes the denial of medical care, the use of solitary confinement, a lack of access to legal counsel, and even torture.
South Korean prosecutors called for death penalty to be handed down to former President Yoon Suk-yeol for his December 2024 declaration of martial law, which plunged the country into chaos.
Once embraced by world leaders, the ex-president of South Korea, Yoon Suk-yeol, now faces the ultimate punishment. A special counsel has asked a court in Seoul to sentence Yoon to death after he imposed martial law on the country on December 3rd of 2024. The state of martial law only lasted 6 hours because the South Korean National Assembly quickly voted it down and citizens flooded the streets in protest and clashed with the military. Amid a huge public outcry, Yoon was later impeached, removed from office, and arrested, with prosecutors claiming he had conspired with military leaders to take over the legislature and to detain his political enemies, accusations he denies. In addition to insurrection charges, Yoon also faces criminal accusations of corruption, trading favors, and rebellion. He's also accused of ordering drones to fly over North Korea to provoke Pyongyang as a pretext to declaring martial law. His wife, the former First Lady Kim Gung-hee, is also in legal hot water. She's on trial for corruption, accused of bribery and accepting luxury gifts, facing a possible sentence of 15 years in prison and is due to be sentenced later this month. As for Yoon, the court is expected to hand down its verdict in the coming weeks. Experts say even if he's sentenced to death, it's unlikely that he'll be executed. He'll rather spend his life in prison, given that South Korea hasn't carried out an execution since 1997.
Let's go in for a short commercial break. More world news coming right after this. Welcome back. President Lee Jae-myung held bilateral talks with Japanese Prime Minister Sanae Takahashi. The two leaders are visiting the historic Horiji Temple today before President Lee wraps up his two-day trip by having lunch with the local Korean community.
The second summit between President Lee Jae-myung and Japanese Prime Minister Sanae Takahashi began with what President Lee described as an exceptional welcome. In a surprise gesture, Prime Minister Takahashi personally received President Lee at his accommodation in Nara. He is the first foreign leader to be invited to the prefecture since Takahashi took office last October. Tuesday's summit talks lasted nearly an hour and a half, starting with a restricted session including a small number of aides, followed by an expanded meeting and a joint press briefing. What stood out was what President Lee called a small but meaningful progress on sensitive historical issues, particularly the Chosei coal mine. More than 100 forcibly mobilized Korean laborers and Japanese were killed in a flooding disaster in 1942. Until now, civic groups have led efforts to investigate and recover the victims' remains, but the Japanese government's initial response have been criticized as slow and passive. And at a time of heightened tensions between China and Japan following Prime Minister Takahashi's remarks on Taiwan, President Lee emphasized the need for South Korea, China, and Japan to find as much common ground as possible and to continue communication and cooperation. The two leaders also underscored the importance of working together to maintain regional stability.
As the strategic environment surrounding the two countries becomes increasingly complex, the importance of Japan-South Korea cooperation and trilateral coordination with the U.S. continues to grow. We reaffirmed our commitment to closely align on North Korea policy, including the complete denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula.
But it was their one-on-one after the press briefing that took the spotlight. Appearing in matching blue outfits, Lee and Takahashi took part in an impromptu drum performance of the BTS song Dynamite and Golden from K-pop Demon Hunters. This was a special event prepared by Japan, reflecting Prime Minister Takahashi's longtime passion for heavy metal drumming.
India's basmati rice exports to Iran have slowed to a near standstill amid the protests gripping the Gulf country, with suppliers wary of new deals due to the risk of non-payment and potential additional US tariffs.
Exports of Indian basmati rice to Iran have nearly ground to a halt. That's as suppliers have become reluctant to sign new contracts with Iranian buyers amid the civil unrest in the country. Trade officials say the uncertainty is due to fears of non-payment and potential additional US tariffs. On Monday, US President Donald Trump said any country that kept trading with Iran would face new 25% levies on their exports to the US. One leading rice exporter said the proposed tariff would add to challenges for the Indian farm sector. The country is Iran's largest rice supplier, with the staple grain accounting for nearly two-thirds of all Iranian imports from India. Dev Garg is the vice president of the Indian Rice Exporters Federation.
Since Iran is our second largest market in the world, losing or even a small threat, a significant threat to that market share is a very concerning situation for the exporters and for the entire agriculture sector in India. Because as we have seen that the prices in India have fallen, even by the news of this chaos. So if this chaos continues or intensifies further, this will lead to cascading effect throughout the supply chain.
Garg said Iranian buyers have been unable to honor existing commitments and remit payments to India, compounding uncertainty for sellers. India's Ministry of Commerce and Industry has declined to comment. Iran has previously supplied foreign exchange to food importers at a subsidized rate, but has now suspended that provision, effectively making imports much more expensive for buyers. India's exports to Iran, largely food items such as rice, fell to 1.24 billion in the 2024-25 fiscal year, little more than a third of the figure 6 years earlier. Major Indian exports to Iran include basmati rice and pharmaceuticals, while imports consist mainly of fresh and dried fruits.
Ugandan authorities cut internet access and limited mobile services across the country 2 days before an election in which President Yoweri Museveni will stand for a contentious 7th term after 4 decades in power.
Uganda's government cut off public internet access and limited mobile services across the country on Tuesday. That comes just 2 days before a presidential election that will see incumbent Yoweri Museveni stand for a contentious 7th term. The Uganda Communications Commission told mobile companies to block public internet starting at 6 p.m. local time. George William Nyumbi Thembo is the body's executive director.
The internet restriction directed is in line with the legitimate purpose. That is protecting national security, public safety, and public order.
The government last month denied it had plans to shut the internet during the election, calling reports false and misleading. Security forces have arrested hundreds of opposition supporters in recent weeks. They have also used live bullets and tear gas to break up campaign events for Bobi Wine, a pop star turned politician who is the main rival to Museveni. The 81-year-old has been in power since 1986 after leading a rebellion. He is now one of Africa's longest-serving leaders, having changed the constitution to remove age and term limits. Analysts say Museveni controls most government institutions, making defeat unlikely in the Eastern African country of 46 million people.
Bill and Hillary Clinton refused to testify in a Republican-led congressional investigation of the late convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein, saying it was a partisan exercise.
Bill and Hillary Clinton on Tuesday refused to testify in a Republican-led congressional investigation of the late convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. The Clintons wrote a letter to Republican Representative James Comer, who chairs the House of Representatives Oversight Committee. They said that, quote, every person has to decide when they have seen or had enough and are ready to fight for this country, its principles and its people, no matter the consequences. The couple said, for them, now is that time. The probe comes as the US Justice Department releases files tied to criminal probes of Epstein, who was once friends with Trump and the Clintons, in compliance with a transparency law passed by Congress. The Clintons said that they had tried to provide what, quote, little information they had, and called the congressional investigation partisan politics.
I think everyone knows by now Bill Clinton did not show up, and I think it's important to note that this subpoena was voted on in a bipartisan manner by this committee.
Comer said the committee will meet next week to hold former Democratic President Bill Clinton in contempt. That could potentially lead to criminal charges. A committee spokesperson said the panel will also begin contempt proceedings against Hillary Clinton if she does not appear on Wednesday. A separate letter sent by the Clintons' attorneys on Monday said the subpoenas for their testimony were invalid and unenforceable, adding they were, quote, nothing more than a ploy to attempt to embarrass political rivals, as President Trump has directed. Clinton has expressed regret about his relationship with Epstein and has said he knew nothing about his criminal activity. No evidence has surfaced that Clinton was involved in sex trafficking.
Time for a short break now. We'll be right back with more world news. Welcome back. Photos of students going back as far as the school's inception in 1932 now lines in the halls, bringing a sweet surprise of the school roots to the present community.
It was a homecoming of sorts at Holloway High in Murfreesboro, Tennessee. The photos of students going as far back as the school's inception in 1932 now line the school's halls. Principal Sumatra Drayton says she knew there were composite drawings of the early graduating classes being kept at the local Elks Lodge. but she made it her mission to get them housed at Holloway. The drawings tell their own story about the school's past. Up until 1968, it was segregated and for black students only. Dr. Gloria Bonner was part of the last graduating class before desegregation.
I just remember Holloway High School for its vibrancy. It was the centerpiece of the black community. Education was a...
Now current students get to see the faces and hear some of the stories that came through the school before they did.
I mean, I didn't know about the rich history of the school, and it was really eye-opening.
We need to have a museum because these are really special.
The women were pen pals for more than 30 years when Perk says 16-year-old high school junior and Louise was a 7-year-old second grader and discovered each other later on in life.
These women have a very special bond. They met when Dr. Suzanne Pugh delivered Megan Lewis's first baby. Little did they know how far back their bond actually reaches.
I found 4 letters from a pen pal that I had from second grade.
The letters are dated 1994 and 1995. This one is signed your pen pal, Suzanne Kojal.
I Googled the name because I was curious to see who it was.
This image popped up of Dr. Suzanne Kojal Pugh.
My mouth dropped open. I immediately sent Dr. Pugh a picture and I said, this is a letter that I found from when I was in elementary school. Could this be you? And she said, yes, it is me.
Dr. Pugh was driving with her husband.
I did one of those wife gasps where he said, oh my gosh, what is happening? And I said, you are never going to believe this story.
Dr. Pugh was a 16-year-old high school junior. Megan was just a 7-year-old second grader. My favorite food is French fries and my favorite color is green, Suzanne wrote to Megan, adding stickers of a troll doll, a turtle, and a cat.
If I could go back in time and tell myself in second grade that my pen pal would deliver my kids, I don't think I would believe it.
And with that, we come to the end of today's edition of World News Tonight. With the hope to see you again, I'm Sydney Adhikari and we leave you tonight with the visuals of an ancient Rome home opening to the public with remote guided tours. Also, don't forget to send us your feedback through email at feedback.adncenglish@darren.lk or via WhatsApp at 076-805-7933. Thank you for watching World News Tonight on Other Darren News Channel. Have a good night.